Pardesi Beats. What's up, everybody? You guys are watching and listening to Pardesi Beats Unplugged. Today's episode is Paghs and Drugs, When Worlds Collide. And we're talking about the space between two worlds and then when the worlds actually collide. So we're kind of living in a space as, you know, Punjabi, and we're talking about our perspective, obviously, because it's our podcast, right? So we can't speak on everybody's perspective. But maybe if you have a perspective, I definitely want to read it in the comments. So please do that, and we can talk about that in the future. But us as Punjabi kids, sort of growing up, you know, how it was, you know, the culture we had at home versus, and to kind of find a way to bridge the gap between the culture of society that we experienced when we were going to school. So that's the topic for today. I'm Patwant Singh. With me here in today's video or audio is Kushwant Singh, who's at the bottom of my screen, and M. Tadwal Yanike Malik, who's on the left of me on my screen. So I don't know what order you guys are going to see it in, but I feel like, you know, because it has a little bit of a wrestling theme to the title, I wanted to kind of go with in this corner. It didn't really work out because there's only three of us. So
in this corner, we have weighing in at 101 pounds, M. Tadwal.
That's an accurate weight for him.
Should I get up and like slap my butt and flex a little bit?
Yes, we're waiting.
Hulk Hogan my shirt? No.
Brother.
We're waiting. All right. So today we're going to talk about sort of that little concept of, like, you know, how it was growing up. And I feel like I might have a little bit of a different edge than you guys, because I was growing up in the 80s, right? And then I would argue that you guys grew up in the 90s, even if you have a little bit of influence of older siblings who brought a little bit of that other vibe in there. So the theory behind this, the concept behind this is that I remember going to school and just getting my mind blown by, like, that's how things are. And people used to be like, why you do that? Like, why are you wearing that? Like, and I'm not even talking about the pug or the patka or the turban. I'm talking about just the way we dressed, the way we talked, the
food we brought for lunch.
Yeah. What's that smell? It's called tadka, right? And so things like that. So, I mean, that's sort of the general idea today. It's kind of funny, but kind of serious at the same time. Malik, I'll let you kind of take it from here, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, I think with our Paghs and Drugs series, our goal is always to kind of shed light on being children of immigrants and kind of that struggle that we faced being between two cultures. So when worlds collide. And as you were talking, the one thing that really stood out to me was figuring out my identity and how I conform into this world, in this space, if it's school, if it's extracurricular activities. And that's something that I really struggled with. We've talked a little bit about this in previous episodes of my physical identity, me trying to grow out my hair and wear a turban. Clearly it didn't get to that point. Clearly that's still a struggle that's going on. I have a video
that says otherwise, but yeah, sure.
And the thing was with that too, I guess we'll jump into that first and we'll talk a little bit about the other side of it. But sure. I grew up my hair a couple of times. So grade 6, I remember, grade 9, I remember as well. Going into grade 10, I had very long hair, but I never fully committed, because for me, it was that internal struggle of, okay, if I start wearing a turban, that's going to be my identity. Whereas I was still very, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, very whitewashed, or kind of more in touch with that side rather than my home culture. And I guess that's a good way to kind of explain it. It's home culture versus society and what we were trying to fit in.
So just to kind of add to your thing, the culture, the home culture that we speak of, the culture at home is obviously a reflection of the culture of our parents and our I guess you can say ethnic culture, or, you know, our language culture or religious culture. But at the same time, not everybody has that same view like a general view. So every household is a little bit different in their approach. So another thing, just to kind of, I will give you the spotlight back in a second, is just that, you know, we all sort of experienced our, let's just say for lack of better terms, Punjabi culture at home a little bit differently, to different extremes, to different extents, to like some parents not caring, like "Oh, karla jo karna," where other parents would be like, you know, "Shittar pehenge if you do that," which means you're going to get a spanking in a very
even
rough and
language, right?
tumble way. What's that?
Even language, and
Yeah.
we're generalizing to Punjabi because that's what we know. But if we think of any immigrant family that's come here and their kids, a lot of the issues that we talk about are very similar. If you're Italian background, if you're Middle Eastern, anywhere, it's that struggle between what is my identity at home, what is my identity outside with my friends, and what is that middle ground like?
The funny thing is, most of the world's cultures that are not Western European can attest to the thing we're talking about today. So it's kind of funny, just based off of friends and people I know, I'm saying that. So why don't you start, Malik? I'll give it back to you again, like I took it away from you just now, but sorry about that. But go ahead.
I mean, I Kush is kind of quiet, so I'll tag him in quickly here after. But just thinking of like identity and culture for me growing up, I was again very Canadian, very tied in with that side of my roots until I got into high school, and then I went to a high school that was predominantly Punjabis, predominantly Sikh, and then that's kind of where I grew my identity. And as you know, if you do,
so which high school did you go to and when?
J. Percy Page. So for those I guess that are not from Edmonton, I'm sure you've heard of Mill Woods, which is the stereotypical place where every brown person grew up. That my school was in the heart of that. So growing up, going to that high school is where a lot of the changes happened for me of like, oh, okay, I'm brown skinned and I should speak Punjabi. And growing up, I always had that connection with language, but I never had that connection with language. Like I knew how to talk, I knew how to write, but I never really identified with it until I got into high school. And it was like, oh yeah, I know how to do Bhangra and I know how to sing.
Yeah.
Can I? Oh, okay. And then, well, now we know that if you do a quick YouTube search.
Just a little side note, I also went to J. Percy Page, graduated a lot earlier than you did. So the thing with Page is, it was like, its location wasn't like arguably the hub or a little bit to the west of the center of Mill Woods. And it was thus High School of Mill Woods, right? And so everybody who was in Mill Woods went there. And the time that I went there, it was also one of the popular schools. Like, for lack of better terms, all the Punjabi, or no, I wouldn't even say Punjabi only, all the brown kids wanted to go to Page at that time. Whether they were Punjabi or there was another culture that was, you know, South Asian. Because I know there's way more than Punjabis there, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of them, they just wanted to go to Page because that's where everybody is at. And after my time there, it kind of transitioned into Harry Ainley and then McNally and a bunch of other schools. But yeah, man, I remember there was this area when you would enter, the one that was beside the rec center. There was an entrance and it was facing the 7-Eleven and ETS bus stop area. I think it was called Sunwapta House, those doors. And that's where all the upbringing used to hang out. And they used to hang out upstairs.
It shifted when I was there.
It shifted to the other side, right?
Yeah.
Because it was the darker side. But the reason it was on that side during our time was because a lot of the guys that I went to school with, they had cars, and that was the doors going right to the parking lot.
Yeah.
And also the doors next to it were facing that little smoking area, which was, you know, right beside the pool, beside the rec center. So a lot of guys would go and just chill out there and talk to like girls and stuff, and get secondhand smoke, and then, or some of them would smoke themselves. Don't worry, I won't reveal who you are, and things like that. So it was a very interesting time.
The irony for me is, though, the reason I went to Page wasn't because of any of that. Wasn't because I wanted to tie in with my culture and meet all these people. That for me it was, hey, they have a mechanics program, I want to be a mechanic, and that's the reason I picked J. Percy Page.
Was your okay? Here's a question for you without revealing the person's name. Was your mechanics teacher a brown guy?
Yes, and that was a reason, because he grew up with my family. So Like
Yeah.
I knew him. I'm like, all right, that's a good enough.
He's a
reason for me to go.
prominently known person here in Edmonton, so we're not going to say his name, but if you know, you
Yeah.
know. He's a cool teacher.
Yeah. So he also said I was a terrible mechanic and I had no future, so I should stick to academics, and I guess that worked out for me. But yeah, I'm not very good with tools, as we've discussed throughout many of our episodes. But I'll tag in Kush here because me and Kush went to school, same junior high. And when I knew Kush, I said this description off air. He was the whitest guy I knew that wore a pug or a patka at that time.
Yeah,
patka. Yeah, but I was like, this is the whitest kid. How does he have a patka?
A turban, for those that don't know.
Yeah. So that was and I didn't know Kushi very well at that time. Our friendship grew later, but that was just my outward intro. I'm like, he has a turban and he seems he plays computer games. This doesn't make sense here to me.
Yeah.
And I'll tag you in. Like, I feel like that for your perspective on kind of the worlds colliding.
Well, it's interesting because I never really thought, I still don't think about this stuff. Like, to me, it doesn't matter, right? So it's like, it's weird when I talk about it, because it's like, oh, okay, you got to analyze it and like see how cultures impact this and stuff, you know? So it's like, it's always kind of just like fresh thoughts for me, because I don't really put much stock into these kind of things, because at the end of the day, I don't think it matters too much, but it's always unique, right? That's how you kind of break down kind of impacts on different people and how things work. But yeah, like I didn't know like what was a Punjabi thing, what wasn't really growing up, and like predominantly like I always had like a mixed friend circle, but my best friends were not Punjabi, right, until later. So I'm talking about like elementary here. Even like before elementary, like people in the neighborhood, they were not Punjabi. There was Punjabi people there, but like they weren't the people I was chilling with or whatever, right? You know, so I grew up playing like hockey on the street near Sakha School with a couple, like with some Gore, right? So then there was Punjabis who played. They'll know who they are. They played right across Sakha School. Yeah, I would go with those guys too, but that wasn't my main crew, right? I would go play there, the Crescent Hockey. But like that wasn't the main thing. That was like a secondary thing. It always felt like for me, right? And the people I hung out with are best friends of mine and stuff like in elementary, where they weren't the Apane, they weren't Punjabi folks or whatever, they see brown. They were you know, I had a indigenous best friend and I had a, you know, a Caucasian white best friend, right? So like, and I don't know, it's always weird to explain it, but like, yeah, like I said, like those things didn't matter because what brought us together was like like you said, like your nerdy Canadian stuff, like me playing video games with those guys all the time or whatever, right? Like we didn't care. Like we like, oh, whatever. Yeah. We're just here. We're just gaming out. We enjoy, or however many of us, we enjoy these video games. We're gonna play them together, spend time that way. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it before on the pod, but like, they used to come over in the mornings. One of them, he would just like pick me up, kind of like because he lived a little further down the street from the school than we did. So he'd walk to my house and then he'd come in. He'd just see me get my case getting done by my mom. Actually, like ties my patka, does my juda, and like
case means hair for those that don't know.
Case his hair, and then like he'd get like roti in the morning for my mom, right? Like some brekkie. So things like that is like, okay, you don't really think about it, but it's like, yeah, it's like you get to see a little bit of like how my lifestyle was as somebody who you know, had kept his case pretty much throughout his entire life. So that was pretty cool. And then, you know, things kind of like in junior high stayed the same in that sense, where it was like I knew a lot of brown folks, right? I hung out with more brown folks. I started making like
baby.
Yeah, like I met people that would probably be, you know, later on in life became close. People during that time that became very close, that were, you know, that were brown, but like I still also had those folks who weren't, right? I still was going every lunchtime into the computer rooms playing video games.
I know you
Buying,
bullied me.
yeah, buying Yu-Gi-Oh cards and then dueling at lunch with my friends, right?
Yeah, man. You had Yu-Gi-Oh. You were like into all the like things that
Anime.
Punjabi kids typically weren't into. Even I can say that.
Yeah, there was one other Punjabi kid who had Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and he would play with with us, right? There was it wasn't like a big group of people. A lot of people had them, but it was like in terms of who I hung out with and played with, there was like maybe 7 or something. But either way, there was another, but like I feel like I felt racism for the first time in junior high when we would always, like I said, go and play those video games at lunchtime. But we all had our files hidden, right? Because that time, like, you can't have video games on your stuff, right? Like, you're not supposed to be going during lunchtime to play games.
Unreal Tournament, yeah.
Unreal Tournament, there it is, right? And so people had access to files. We did. And then sometimes we would share our accounts, but we hid everything, right? Because back then you can hide the files and people don't know how to like find that if you hide your folders. And so we had everything downloaded and we had the folders hidden. There was like 6 of us, and then some of us would give out our passwords so that people can log in and play. And then at lunchtime we just have like a giant ass multiplayer. Everyone would just kill each other on Unreal Tournament. But the thing was, like, I got ratted out by this one guy got found out, then he ratted me out. And there was another guy who got ratted out, but like I was the one who was picked on. The other guy was white, right? Like he had same thing as me, right? He's doing the same thing, having the hidden files, everything, but nothing happened to that guy. Nothing, right? I even said, like, hey, when I got brought into the office and stuff to talk to that assistant principal, which won't say his name here, but my brother had him too, and he did some racist stuff to my brother when he was over there as a gym teacher for him at Page before I was at Baker and had him as an assistant principal.
We have a limitation on the time frame of our graduation, and people can dig for these names now.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. Go on.
Anyways, and I was the one who was pointed out and got a suspension, in school suspension, but like no one else was who like had those files and then that they knew of, and my name was thrown under the bus, not anyone else's, right? Like when literally so many people did, I was like, yo, man, like, you're a piece for that guy who did that to me.
Yeah.
And then also the assistant principal just doing that to me when I pointed that out, right? So that was like a thing where I was like, oh, is this because I'm different, right? So that was like a little weird moment in my life where I was like, oh, I don't understand. But like, whatever, I moved on at it. I was like, whatever, it is what it is. And it happened. And because like I said, I don't put stock in those things, right? I don't really dwell on them. And then I kind of moved on. And then like high school was where it was like, okay, I still wasn't predominantly hanging out or had like my main homies as like brown people, and probably until like later in grade 11 and then grade 12 where it shifted for me, because I was playing football in my first 2 years there, and then so I was hanging out with a lot of my football buddies at lunchtime, and like that's what we would do. We'd go outside even in winter and just go play football. But then I also started playing cricket, like with like a lot of the fobs and stuff, right? A lot of the people who were like newer to Canada, and met one of my best friends there through cricket, and he wasn't like that desi at all, or even Punjabi at all. He was actually very similar. And so that's Jogi, if anyone is wondering. But yeah, I also then started after football, I didn't really hang out with those guys because I didn't play in grade 12. So they were just still on the team, some of them weren't. So I started chilling with like another group, like some more like brown people, right? And those guys actually ended up becoming like lifelong friends, which is really interesting enough because they were very similar in that they weren't necessarily like they were kind of like more of a Canadian culture, which is what I really was, because like even like the other day I was just singing at the restaurant to Sum 41. Like, you know what, like that's not necessarily a brown person's song go-to band or whatever, right? But like
that is my go-to band. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was like that's like that's the Canadian side coming in, right? Or like that culture side, that where the clash comes. Like most people listen like Bob Boomon or some shit. But anyways, yeah, like I meshed with these guys, became friends, stayed friends after school, right? And then I kind of saw like I started hanging out with more brown people, and then I got involved with like sick organizations at the U of A and stuff, the SSA. diving more into those things, diving into more like my identity as a Sikh, as a human being, kind of seeing more like the cultural thing, and then seeing, it's not something I like to say, but like you can see divisions sometimes in society, right? To this day. And yeah, it's just like analyzing those things and just kind of like
Is
seeing
it
those
is it
now.
is it kind of like a good way to put it is like there was like this tailored suit that was ready for us with a hybrid of the cultures, but growing up we didn't really realize that we had this suit that would fit us. And so we're growing up trying to wear this thing that we don't know what it is or how to wear it. It doesn't fit just right. We don't know why we're wearing it. We're getting ridiculed for wearing it. But eventually, when you grow and you get to that sort of, I would argue, grade 11 onwards phase into university and into work life, just that school time phase of like later high school and post-secondary is where you sort of find your identity in terms of that. That's where I found mine. Kush, I'm kind of guessing that from yours. Malik, I'm guessing that from you as well.
I don't think so.
No? Okay, well then.
I think I went the complete opposite. So grade 11 and university, I completely wore the other suit. I mean, you could say I was wearing a kurta pajama, haha, joke. But I want to actually follow up on a question with Kush, because
Can I touch on what he just said?
Yeah.
So I think that is ever evolving. And you become a product of what your environment is. Because I could say after university, I was predominantly seeing more uppity folk, right, brown folks, because I wasn't working, and this is after university, after a little bit of a work phase for me. It's kind of like when I had my sabbatical, you could say, where I took some time off of work to travel. Since I wasn't in those environments where you're kind of like forced to mix with people and see just random people or wherever. I was seeing probably more, I guess, Punjabi folks, or not Punjabi folks, but just brown folks. And because I guess those are some of the ties that I've kept. Like I said, like since high school, so a lot of those friends stayed really close, and then it just kind of evolved. Like when your circles just expand. Like when I started playing ball hockey, and then like most people on the team, not most, like almost all were, some were brown, right? And there was a few people who weren't, but they're still part of the crew. That wasn't really anything different. But then the teams obviously changed. But like the core of that team, we would always hang out, right? As different faces go in and out. It didn't matter what color you were. Some brown people left too. I still don't keep in touch with them or anything, right? So I'm not trying to say it's a brown thing only, but either way, it's like that was my crowd, right? So that's kind of what I started becoming. I started seeing that way more. I started seeing how brown people interact, right? Like you can say like insert brown meme here, Surrey Jack meme here, right? Like the Punjabi boy, right? Like
Kush, you
let's
give
drink
out
Crown
that vibe.
Royal, that kind of stuff.
Hardcore Punjabi boy vibe. The word that kind of come to my mind, especially as you're talking about your story, is, and I would argue this is the case for a lot of children of immigrants that are kind of going through this battle, is being a chameleon. In certain environments, we behave a certain way. With our brown boys, we're behaving like brown boys. But when we're in different environments with our other friends, and Kush, you can attest to this, when you're hanging out with your football boys, it's very different than when you're hanging out with your cricket boys.
Yeah, kind of. You're going to relate on different aspects, so you might say stuff, but I would not agree that I act like that kind of style of like, if I'm with a brown crew, I'm going to act like a brown boy or whatever. But there's like aspects that will relate to that I will definitely touch on.
Stand out more. That won't be present in the other environments.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's important to note, especially like the goal with this is to shed light on the issues that we've went through. And I can guarantee that there's people that are listening and watching to this right now that are going through the same stuff that we've been through. And it's important to know that like there's no linear progression to figuring out your identity and where you fit in this spectrum of the two cultures and the world's colliding.
Yeah. There is none, right? It's really just the experiences you have and what you kind of make out of it. Because there's never going to be an ideal scenario where it's like, here you go, you can have this option or this option. It's like, no, you get what you get.
We talked about this last Bugs and Drugs. Doctor, engineer, lawyer, that's it.
Yeah.
and that's not it anymore.
That's
I
not
want
it.
to
That's
actually
not it.
I want to kind of piggyback on that because when you were talking about your in-school suspension, something kind of triggered in my brain that I want to check in with. When worlds collide,
Yeah.
stereotypically, as Punjabi folk, we're held to very high academic standards by our parents.
I knew where this was going.
And I'm kind of curious, and I mean, I could be barking up the wrong tree, but I'm kind of curious when little
What was
Cushy
your
came home.
reaction?
Yeah, like did the world just explode there, and we got a nice stern talking to? Or I'm
Again,
kind of
maybe he
curious.
had older siblings that broke these barriers down a little bit. Just saying, but go on, Kush.
So I thought it would be taken not well, but it was actually okay for me. A lot of those things where the super strict getting my ass beat, you know, it is what it happened. That was like maybe elementary, mostly elementary, and even just whatever before, right? There also came a point where it felt like I became Super Saiyan, where like those things wouldn't hurt anymore, getting beat, right? As like a form of discipline. And then like I gained like this power. And then at that point, whoever was trying to like lay out that discipline, I would just laugh at them. And that really stopped it, right? And I was like, I'm so strong now. But yeah, no, that didn't happen. That I really, of course, like I feared my dad the most because he's the head disciplinary for myself. And you know, you got brown dad kind of cultural vibes and stuff and old school mentality. But yeah, that
So
didn't I
Pat,
thought it was
yeah.
gonna be real bad, but it wasn't.
So Pat, you mentioned a sibling of Cush's that might have paved the way for him. Do you want to shed some light on
His
that?
experience are different,
Is
man.
Oh my
is
God.
there any incidents in which certain worlds collided with certain other worlds as you were
Yes,
doing things in
very
your
much
youth?
so. Well, if you want to go into the disciplinary side of things, I mean, I've been probably the one who broke down a lot of barriers in our family, being the oldest and being,
Because he did a lot of the dumb shit.
you know, I didn't do the typical dumb shit though. That's the
I know,
thing.
I'm just kidding.
I actually, during high school, I didn't even drink. I didn't do anything like that involved anything like that. And I used to like to go out and hang out with my friends. I wanted to do that because I started developing a new friendship circle in high school, which is sort of when I found that I started to hang out with Punjabi people exclusively, or not exclusively, but predominantly, let's say. And so that for me started happening in like grade 11 and 12, where I started hanging out with Punjabi people a lot. And it, in fact, partially started because of music. And I've always listened to Punjabi music no matter what. But in elementary, junior high, even grade 10, when I first went to high school, and I was like, what the heck is this? Because high school is a totally different game when you go into high school. Um, all my friends were like just people I met in class. I'm talking grade 10 here. Just like I had a friend named Troy. I still have him. Like we're not hang out or anything, but I still have him on Facebook and stuff. But so I hung out with Troy and we became buddies in phys ed class. Just like, what the heck is this? Just both doing that. Then he's like, oh, I'm gonna go egg this girl's house at lunch. You want to come with me? So I just went with him, and just like that, like I just started hanging out with his buddies, and we just started making buddies that were in our class, right? And they weren't like a solid group of friends. It was just people to hang out with.
This is when your mom warns you, don't get involved in drugs and gangs.
Company maadi hundi hai,
You
company
know what's
mein aane
funny?
di.
I didn't have those warnings till I started hanging out with Punjabi kids, because the reputation of the Punjabi kids at that time wasn't the best in social circles and families, and in the auntie and uncle, the langula things. And, you know, there was even certain elders in our society, in our culture, that would drive around the school making sure everybody's behaving specifically in a certain way, you know, asked to do that by other parents and stuff. So there was like a
do you know my
watch.
cuz Bindi?
What's that?
You know my cuz Bindi?
Kind of, but not quite. But yeah, so, you know, there was like a lot of different things at that time. But the thing for me was this, like, I remember, like, it's even more like sheltered than I guess what you guys are saying. So when I was in like elementary school, let me tell you this. So I didn't know how to dress. So my biggest thing was like, I have no idea. And eventually I got to junior high and I got made fun of for it. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should.
I mean, arguably, you still don't know how to dress. I've seen some of those Man U jerseys. So
Says the guy who have a picture of wearing one. So I mean, at the end of the day, don't forget where you got your Parallel jersey from. At the end of the day, you know, like I used to wear, like my mom used to buy me whatever from Kmart, right? Or wherever the heck she got it.
Zellers
like, here, I got you a
Zellers
shirt.
was a place, man. Zellers
No,
was,
it was before
home.
Zellers wasn't even like
Millwoods
80s.
Town Center.
Millwoods Town Center. It was like Kmart.
Kmart and Zellers.
No,
Kmart,
it was Eaton's.
Kmart, then
yeah.
So it was Eaton's and Kmart in Millwoods Town Center in those days, and other stores like, what's that store like? I forgot. Like San. Remember San? And all those kind of stupid stores like
San
that.
Francisco.
No, that was that was a fun store. But
Fabricland.
Fabricland.
Fabricland still.
Every
amazing.
Punjabi kid, when their mom went to Fabricland, wanted to pretty much jump off of a cliff. Like, it was the worst.
But the thing with me was, again, being very whitewashed. I grew up learning how to sew and do. So I loved Fabricland.
Is that whitewashed, or did you just hang out with your mom a lot?
Just a weird kid.
That's a Punjabi thing, man.
That's a
I don't think so.
Yeah.
If we're thinking stereotypes, boys don't learn these things.
Right? Not boys, not necessarily boys. Yeah,
right.
But
Fair
like,
enough,
that's a Punjabi skill for show.
That's that's a very highly touted Punjabi skill, knowing how to make your own clothes or sew them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would go, like, my mom would buy these, like, there's like these shirts with Fred Flintstone and stuff on them, and then like sweatpants, and my mom would be like, tuck your shirt into your pants. So I had a Flintstones t-shirt tucked into my sweatpants while I was wearing hiking shoes, because the one thing I always had a choice in and I always liked was my shoes, my kicks. And I remember as far back as grade 2, 3 and onwards, I remember my ummi, who's my taish, taking me to Foot Locker in Millwoods Town Center, and I got, I think it was the first or second series of Michael Jordan's Nike Air collaborative series, because Jordan's came after. This was Nike Air when he was promoting Nike Air. And so I had my first pair of Nike Air and Reebok pump shoes. She bought me 2. So I always had the kick game on point, but I started liking hiking boots as well. Cushy, the kind you have in the garage, those kind, with sweatpants, with a tucked in t-shirt. And
I can picture this very vividly. This is
Still
exactly what I
like
think.
that.
Yeah. When I think of you as a kid, when I think of you as a kid, that's the image that kind of.
I can only do it because I've seen the photos.
Yeah, like, I don't know, Malik, you wouldn't. Do you even remember those? Like, I don't know if you should remember that.
I don't. I just. But when you think of like elementary child, that's what I picture of you. Even though I don't think we knew of each other's existence until much later on in life.
Yeah, so that's how I dress, and then I started getting made fun of in junior high, like grade 7. They're like, ha ha ha. Like,
But I want to bring up a point that we always brush over this, especially in our Bugs and Drugs, because.
But let me say this one last thing before you go into your point. So the thing that they would say is, like, you wear the same clothes every day, but Punjabi parents would buy, like, these pants are on sale, 3 for 1, or 3 for this price, 10 chaklo, 8 pala, you know, like, just wear the same thing. So I'd have like the same sweatpants. The funny thing is I do that now. Like, I have 30 of the same t-shirt, right? You guys have seen it in every episode. This typical just black Calvin Klein t-shirt. I have literally 30
on camera, sir, please.
No, it's okay. We'll mark this as adult only. But you know what I mean? So then I was getting made fun of. And then I realized, like, hey, maybe I need to discover jeans. And that's where the Levi's came in. But go back to your point and we'll talk.
We always talk about in these episodes the struggle that we had as kids trying to fit in and conform. But shout out to all the parents, and I would say still to all the parents that are trying to navigate this unknown. Like, we're navigating it, but we encounter it every single day with our environments in elementary, junior high, and high school. But these parents have no idea. They're like, oh, okay, this pant is on sale, let me buy it. Like, I want to make their intentions are so pure. Like, they want the kid, like, they'll sign you up for soccer. I remember one year I'm like, Mom, I want to play baseball. My mom's like, first of all, why? Second of all, okay, when's registration? Right? It was never like, no, we don't do that. It was like, especially for, I think that is a struggle with parents. They try their hardest, but oftentimes, and going back to the point,
they just don't understand, right?
Yeah, and it's like, they're, even if we're talking about like company, like we talked about the reputation of the kids that we were hanging around with. That's another thing. Like they can't control that, but they were trying their best to be like, hey, I want my kid to be okay. Like I don't want anything bad to happen to them. So we always talk about our experience, but I feel like it'd be really neat to have a perspective of like our parents, and obviously they'll tell us very terrible stories about how we were the worst
Kushi,
kids ever.
go get them.
But
let's bring them.
But
on.
I think that, but just shout out to even the parents that are even now, right? If we think about parents, even if we think about international students, they're going through the same stuff that we've gone
it's
through.
a culture shock, right? Like they don't know what to do. They just buy what they have, and even
They
like
try.
those students, I've seen people that are born and raised here making fun of them for how they dress. And the thing is, like, yo, they're not worried about how it looks. They're worried about what they have. Like, do I have pants? Are they warm? Do I have like a winter pair of boots or whatever?
Yeah.
Are they warm? Because they can't buy like 7-8 pairs of boots, like, you know, I guess us who know what to do. And they're coming with a budget. I'm talking about the students specifically, right? They buy the thing or two that they can afford, and
But we can also link that straight to our parents as we were growing up, right? They're like, okay, we want to make sure our kids warm. This bent or this like pair of hiking boots, I know will keep them.
Remember the snowsuit? I had one until a grade 2 or something, grade 3.
Oh, dude, I had it till like all the way through element, and I've told this story on the pod before. I walked into grade 7 thinking I was the coolest, the top dog, because elementary school I was always like top of the class, nerdy boy, popular, whatever. Grade 7, I walk in, fresh shoes from Sears. I'm like, yo, I've upgraded from Zellers and Kmart. Yo, I went to Sears and got these Nikes, bro. I'm gonna be. I got made so much fun of. I had my Hudson Bay hoodie on. I'm like, yo, I went to Sears. I'm the shit. Oh boy, I got shit on.
Heritage Mall, buddy.
Yeah, it was. I remember Bonnie Doon Mall. We went.
Oh, that's Sears.
It's funny that you talk about these clothes things because for Baker, do you remember my silk shirts?
Oh my god.
Oh, I feel like, but that was popular back then, because I remember looking back at pictures now. I'm like, why am I wearing this shirt with a giant dragon on it with like a gradient?
No,
like,
it wasn't one of those ones, but I know those ones. Those ones were a little too much. These were like just straight silk shirts. I don't know if they were yours.
They were mine.
Yeah, right. They were like 3 or 4 different colors.
Yeah,
dude,
one red, one blue, like and then I don't know
every day for a year. And no one said anything to me. But people after the fact, they bring it up, right? They're like, oh yeah, I used to have the silk shirts and stuff, right?
It was a silk shirt. Like imagine Danny Tanner or like Uncle Jesse on date night.
Yeah, I'd be rocking the jeans or whatever. It's pretty funny, man. But yeah, I used to like, because so like if you're even talking about like dressing up, you're talking about sense of style and stuff, and the worlds colliding there. I think I was more on the chill side, because I just wore whatever I just felt like wearing or felt comfortable in. I didn't pay that stuff too much attention. That stuff does matter in certain avenues of you're trying to impress certain people, which you learn about later, right? Trying to dress to impress, essentially. But that never really bothered me, and I guess I don't know. I don't recall any moments where people made fun of me for that stuff either.
You were okay, because I had to change that vibe, and then everybody started buying like.
But I think this is the first thought that came to my head when I tagged Kushi in at the start of the episode. Kushi generally is a very carefree, do what I want to do kind of guy. So things like he mentions, like I never really thought about the cultural divide until, like for us, me and you, Pat, it was like, oh, I'm stuck between home and like
I never gave stock. I don't give stock to people.
And I think that
like
is an important message.
In a sense,
I think that's a very important message, especially from like do what makes you happy. Like if you want to wear silk shirts and play Unreal Tournament, go for it.
Yeah.
If you if you want to wear puka shell necklaces and have your hair down to your shoulders, do that. And I did that in grade 10.
Like I remember I got a Puma jacket, a Kappa jacket.
Kappa.
Like
that was
like a year and a half after the trend, like 2 years after. And I just wore it. I was walking with it on. I'm like, yeah, I got the jacket. I got it, guys. And no one's wearing it anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's like my style. It was like, it's so bad.
And I think the message that we always have with these Bugs and Drugs episodes is like, yeah, the struggle between cultures and finding your identity, it is a journey. Kush has talked about it and him finding it
Everyone's is
late.
different for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, like there's no set path. And the thing is, it's like I don't think there's a reason to stress over these things so
Yeah,
much,
that's the important part.
unless like you're at a point mentally where you feel like maybe there's some a real divide causing you a lot of stress or
know
angst.
that there's there's people out there that are going through the exact same
You know,
stuff
as
as you are.
adults, it's
Yeah,
easy to
or
say
you could
that,
talk about it,
but
right?
when
Like
there's kids that are going through it, like they don't really understand these things that we do now at our age.
no,
Like kids just want to fit in and have friends, right? Like they just want to be in and not out. And that's just what I see with kids that go to school and stuff, right?
yeah,
So
you know, that even ties back to like what I see the way when I look at that, when I like think about it, when you're saying that, it's like what kind of do they value, right? And that goes back to like maybe the situation at home and what was told to them, or how they were taught into
What their environment
what they're
at
steered
home is.
towards, because like
yeah.
to a certain extent, like what you're steered towards to learn like from your parents, they can only do so much, but then obviously environments and the external factors, they're going to impact the kid in another way.
True.
Just ironically enough, actually, like I was talking to my team lead at work today, and he was kind of mentioning his kid, how he got in an argument with another kid there. They were arguing over who's richer and stuff. All right, like it's like little stuff like that where we're like, come on, man, like no one cares, right? But like at that age, when you're young, saying those things or trying to flex on other kids, like that kind of matters to you. But you don't
the
have
kappa
a
jacket. The kappa jacket mattered so much, and I'm going to tell this story
because
because
I'm like trying to flex or something, right? But it's like it's not even.
I remember I got a kappa jacket, and it was around the same time because me and Kush are very close in age, and I got this kappa jacket, and I was like, yo, I'm again the same feeling as I was walking into the top. I'm top dog. Like I'm got this kappa jacket, and one of my buddies was like, hey, can I borrow that for lunch period? I never saw that jacket for another month because it just held so much cred. But now we look back on it, we're like, it's just a jacket. But I think the struggle there is like knowing and trying to find your values and what is important to you and staying true to that. And I've talked about this on a previous pod as well. Growing up the way I looked, especially I know you folks have talked about turban, and there's a whole nother avenue that is difficulty with that. Growing up the way I looked, spiky hair, kind of the typical brown boy look, but not doing drugs and not drinking ever. I struggled a lot with that. I was put in a box that I didn't fit in. And
that's the thing, right? Like that's the other side where it gets a little more serious. When you get to high school, the things that are cool to the crowd that you associate with the most, perhaps visually, without knowing them, you know, as personalities, you don't want to do, or maybe you don't do those things, and you get outed a little bit. And so you have to find your place where kind of you fit in and where you want to fit in, right? Like that's the difference.
I think that's the important part too, especially with the message that we want to go with these episodes, like fit in where you want to fit in.
Yeah. Like it should be what you want, but there is a path to discover that sort of, I guess you can say, you know, that ability to kind of do your own thing. But there is a path to get there. Like sometimes you don't know that right away. Sometimes nobody was there before to show you that. Sometimes, you know, you didn't have that guidance that some of us perhaps did have, right? And I'm not saying I had it. I was the oldest, and I had to find out a lot of things the hard way.
I was the first male going through all of that in my family. So
and there you go. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, sometimes like you think like your parents are giving you shitty suggestions or style tips or advice as well, but actually that is good as well.
Well, you want to know something funny? So the one store I love to go to, like I just love it. I love looking around. I don't like wasting time in it. Is sort of a reflection of how we used to get dressed as kids. It's Mark's Work Warehouse.
Here comes old man Pat.
Old man Pat is here. Mark's Work Warehouse, straight to the winter section, straight to the, you know, plaid shirt, jacket, shacket, whatever you want to call it, Or like, this is straight old man Pat coming. Last year I went to Eddie Bauer and I just like for the first time, and I was like,
It's great. It's great.
This is great. And honestly, like, it's just because I wanted something. I was cold, and when wintertime comes, when fall comes, I go straight to Mark's just to scope out the scene.
And I'll point out, if we're sticking with fashion, pop onto my social media and see the outfits that I wear. I don't have a loud personality. I'm not outgoing, but some of my fashion choice is very outgoing and very loud.
Totally. And Kush too in a different way.
Yeah, and Kush with his, especially I love the way when Kush like rocks like a flower bug or something, right? It's finding the way you want to express it without having to worry about what others say to you.
Yeah, and you eventually find that place.
And it's okay. And it's okay if I look back to my high school self, I'm like, yo, you're a complete dumbass. Like, why did you do that? And there's a lot of regret and remorse there, but it's like, without that journey, I would not be where I am today. And a lot of the kids and a lot of people that are going through it now, even with students, if we think about it that way, we can say, do all these things, but the only way that they're going to find their values and what they like and don't like and what they are is by finding their own journey. So there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And I think it's a struggle, and it sucks that there's no easy answer. Be like, no, you'll be okay. Like, shit sometimes does hit the fan, and you have to face adversity to figure out where and what you stand for.
That's the truth.
Yeah, man. I think that's a great place to wrap it, because
as we've talked in our Paghs and Drugs episodes, there's no ever conclusion to our episodes, because we can go on and on for hours about.
We just have to find a spot to stop.
And they become stuff that we didn't even originally think we were going to talk about.
Yeah, that's the beauty of conversation.
But I think, and I love the title that we came up with, is When Worlds Collide, because as we struggle with our identity, being children of immigrants, our worlds are always colliding, constantly colliding. Even to this day, I would argue I still struggle with my identity, because there's aspects where I'm like, I like that about my culture, but I also like this about society. So I think it's important to know, as we explore and continue on with Paghs and Drugs, and guaranteed in our next season, we'll definitely do more Paghs and Drugs, but knowing that there are struggles and there's other people out there that are going through, if not the same, very similar struggles. So we want to kind of create that platform to normalize talking about what is going on for you from a cultural perspective, from your world's colliding perspective, because as even immigrants, if you're new to the country, if you're children of people that are new to the country, or if you're parenting kids, I think all of them face very similar things, but generally there's no space to talk about it.
Well, you can hear in the comment section below. So make sure you guys comment below and let us know what you think. Like the video, or, save the podcast, download it, share, and obviously subscribe, please. And what we're going to be doing, I'll just let you guys know, is like, we kind of took this first season, which is coming to a conclusion in the next few episodes, of Pardesi Beats Unplugged. And it was a very, go with the flow type of thing, because a lot of our discussions when we were on radio were go with the flow, albeit with a little theme, either music, entertainment, or sports, right? So, a lot of our bringing that to the YouTube or podcast world isn't possible due to copyrights and things like that. So we decided to take this podcast in a little bit of a unplugged direction, hence the title. So yeah, Malik, Kush, we're going to be coming with a season 2 soon, which will be a little bit more polished. But season 1, we a lot of episodes in already. This is our 29th that we're doing. So we'll probably do one more and call it a season. What do you guys think?
Yeah. And again, like Pat said, let us know in the comments below what you like, what you don't like. Also head over to our Instagram and Twitter at Pardesi_Beats, and let us know, slide into our DMs and let us know what you like and what you don't like about our, that's a very, very weird gesture, but make sure you head over to if you heard that on the podcast, before you head over to the YouTube, make sure you give us a 5-star rating, and then see what Pat did with his hand, because that was kind of disturbing.
Slide on in.